Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at the Alexis Hotel in Seattle, Washington with Jess Walter, author of Beautiful Ruins. Jess, welcome to Author.
Thanks for having me.
Jess, this is novel number 6, is that right?
Yeah.
But your writing career as a professional writer began in journalism?
Yeah, I was a newspaper reporter from the time I was 19, actually, while I was still in college, and loved, it was amazing training. I always wanted to be a fiction writer, but I was a dad at 19, and so I wasn't going to be able to go to work in the novel factory. So so for me, journalism turned out to just be this amazing kind of training. It's like I always liken it to playing piano in a bar. You know, you get your chops. You may not get to pick the songs that you get to play all the time, but you're unafraid of publication. You write different things all the time. You have this innate curiosity about the world you get to satisfy. So it was great training ground.
And of course, also as a 19-year-old man, there you are, you've got a child, so now you're becoming an adult whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you're now being exposed to the world.
Yeah.
Society at large in a way that you wouldn't have as just a college
Yeah,
sophomore.
well, and I grew up, I was the first in my family to go to college, and a very blue-collar family. I didn't go on an airplane until I was 20, and so you know, my path into publication was sort of unlikely. You know, it wasn't a huge reading family, and so to even want to be an author, you know, in Spokane, Washington, in the early 1980s seemed sort of insane. You know, but it all worked out.
What struck me when I read this, and this was your first novel that I've read, was that I knew immediately that you were a writer who had his craft down, and by that I mean this: if you saw something on the movie screen of your imagination, you could render it.
Yeah.
I felt confident you could do that.
Right.
And so that's nice. But this is my question to you, the further question of craft. Isn't it true then, the question then becomes, what are you going to see? Not what can you do it, because to some degree you've answered that. I mean, you answer that at some point.
Yeah,
then it's what are you seeing?
This is an interesting book to talk about that with, because it, you know, the story doesn't unfold maybe the way you expect it to, you know. And so, yeah, you know, I talked about getting my chops as a writer, and all 6 of my novels have been very different. Some have been crime novels, some satire, some domestic novels. And so, unlike a lot of writers, I try not to repeat myself. You know, I'm not mining the same territory every time. So, you know, so for me with this book, it was very much showing all the things I feel like I can do as a writer without being showy about it, without, I mean, the narrative and the characters are still the thing that has to drive you. And so craft, to me, always has to take a backseat to those larger issues. And I think sometimes in writing programs, we focus so much on the sentence and on the lyricism of the language that we can lose track of the larger movement of a story. And that's what really inspires me, is structure and movement, and arriving, you know, at an emotional truth that comes out of the form of the thing, almost the way poetry does.
Exactly, and it's the emotional truth. This is what I was getting at, which is that as you grow older, your craft becomes seeing that emotional truth, isn't it? Where you couldn't see it maybe before.
Well, and trusting it too. I mean, so much of writing is a kind of confidence, and it's, you know, and it's the reason a lot of writers are afraid to approach sentiment, because of lapsing into sentimentality.
That's the Faulkner said, some leaps become the worst crime ever.
Yeah, right. And the truth is that, you know, that's what you're trying to do, is connect emotionally on the page with the reader, and to not court sentiment, to not go after emotion is difficult. And I started this book in 1997 before I'd published any novels. I went to Italy and fell in love with the place and started writing, and I'd pick it up every time I finished a book and go back into it. 5 times I did that. But I don't think, I think part of it is not just being a writer, but just being someone who's experienced more. And I don't think as a 28-year-old or a 34-year-old or even a 40-year-old, I don't think I'd seen enough or experienced enough to be able to finish this book either.
And of course, complicated structure can be it's great, but you don't want to get in the way of the emotion, and it just becomes a series of backflips.
Yeah, you aren't showing the reader what you can do.
Right.
If it isn't necessary to push the story along, then and I would argue that that a lot of things can be necessary that we don't first see, and that was always my vision of this. That I may take the reader someplace that seems as if it doesn't. It isn't necessarily connected to these first two people, but it will be. Trust me. And with this story, I think that's one of the reasons it took so long. I finished a draft in 2008, and I thought maybe it was done, and I realized I hadn't come to an ending that satisfied in such a way that all the disparate pieces felt like they belonged all along. And so that was a lot of the last couple of years of work on the book, was making sure that all those pieces came together in such a way that the gears meshed and that it felt complete, that it ended with this arc of completion.
Finding the pieces, I'm always reminded of that great Leonard Cohen song, Anthem, where he has the line, you can add up the sum parts. You can add up the parts, you won't find the sum.
Yeah,
and a novel always feels that way, where it works, but I'll be damned if I know why.
Well, the best novels, certainly. I mean, there's always an air of alchemy or mystery to why they come together that way, and it's the reason it's such an almost impossible form. I love what Tobias Wolff says, that he writes. He likes stories better than novels because you can approach perfection. In a novel, you can't even approach perfection. They are going to be as big and messy as anyone's life. No life can be perfect. No novel can. An episode can be perfect. A meeting, a date.
A line might just be...
Right. You might approach perfection. But with a novel, you're sort of buying in, I think, to the hairy messiness of life. So when they work, when something like 100 Years of Solitude clicks back into place at the end, and you see, it seems to open up in another dimension almost, and it is. I think it's the reason most novelists write, is because they've had that experience of having something click into place like that they read, and they want to try to repeat that.
So finish the sentence for me.
Okay.
If writing has taught me anything, it has taught me what?
Wow. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me everything, I think is how I'd finish it.
No, but that's a good answer.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. It's been your best teacher?
Yeah, it started out as the thing that I wanted to do. It's been the way I look at the world, the way I process grief, the way I celebrate, the way I the way I marvel at beauty, the way, I can't think of a thing that I haven't learned from writing.